I want to know if it's an accurate perspective, kind of as a lead into a question. Is part of Source's non-judgmental view of humanity a knowing that everyone is always doing the best they can to find their alignment, regardless of the thought or action-based approach they are taking?
Yes, and well stated. But we want to add something. Can you hold your place there? We want to add something to it that we just are discovering together, even in these moments that are happening now, and that is that there are so many words that humans use that have become distorted. But the word compassion is really one of the most understood words. So if we were to say to you that Source, in exactly the way that you meant Source just now, has complete compassion, love and compassion for every situation, that means Source isn't writhing or railing against anything that someone might be living, but instead knows the perfection of it. Because Source knows that it is just this step in a never-ending joyful journey. Mm-hmm. So bring it back around to what you were reaching for, because there was more to your question, but say it again, and let's go back and make sure that we are leaving that where we want to.
Sure. My question was, is my perception accurate that Source's non-judgmental view of humanity?
So we would exchange the word non-judgmental, because judgment, everything is a judgment, in that Source has an opinion, and Source is holding to a vibration, and so we've claimed Source to be non-judging, but let's evolve that word and use the word complete compassion, meaning a complete understanding without feeling negative emotion. That's the thing that Source can do. That's the thing that Jesus could do. That's the thing that healers can do, is behold you where you are without feeling pain about where you are, your pain or their pain. In other words, and in that absence of resistance is healing, or is well-being. It's big.
Huge. And then the remainder of that was knowing that everyone is always doing the best they can to find their alignment, regardless of their thought or action.
Well, everyone could do better. Because unless they're feeling wonderful, they could do better. But, so the words are just off just a little bit. Source holding no negative judgment about them not doing better, but instead feeling only compassion in the knowledge that the better is coming. Again, it's the where I am. There's a beginning place in every journey. And when you think about it, since everything is expanding and everything is getting better, then isn't what's coming always better than what is? But if there's a negative comparison between what's coming and what is, then you shoot yourself in the foot and you don't let yourself move toward what's coming. This is the missing piece. So in a compassionate, allowing, surrendering, giving in, accepting, letting be okay what is, there's a releasing of resistance, which is that Source-like quality that you were talking about, which then allows the effortless motion toward what is wanted. Good, really good.
On a different subject, I'd like to ask you...
there are no different subjects.
All right, fair enough. I'd like to ask you about part of the English language, actually a specific word that in polite circles is known as the F word. And the reason I'm asking about it is not so much any kind of a definition, but as its ability to be used in so many different ways. No, people would say they are gloriously happy or hopelessly depressed. You wouldn't say you're gloriously depressed, but you could take that word and put it in front of either of those two descriptions and get your point across. What is it about that word that has so much power?
Well, it's interesting. We always enjoy how a series of questions from someone, especially a thinking person like you, a deliberate creator like you, how the questions all mesh together and lead to one to another to another to another. And this is the case here again, in that the awareness of other people's response is really at the basis of this whole conversation. And in fact, most words are that way. In other words, you speak because you want communication. But it's what we want to get back to is that subject that you were brought up a little bit ago about really not caring what someone else thinks, and would that be something to strive for? And we say you want to strive for the feeling of your inner being while you're not striving so hard for what other people think. But almost everybody, it really cares a lot about what other people think. So when someone gets into a really bad jam where they have really deprived themselves of their resonance and connection to source, so they're feeling at their very worst, often what they want from others is an understanding of where they are. And so often they will use a word that they believe will be the most upsetting or the most shocking in order to render them there. It's sort of like, my pain is so great, if I can get you to share some of it with me, then maybe my burden won't be so great. Of course, it never works that way. It just compounds it. But that is what is at the basis of, there are just a lot of people that want to upset a lot of people. And initially, that F word that you're talking about, that's the way that's the most popular version of it was created and is offered from that point of view.
But what if when it's offered to someone to describe, they are so extremely happy they
well,
can
what's
place
happened?
them in front
What's
of them?
happened to someone like that is that word has become completely diffused to them. In other words, they're not using it in that way. In the one way, when it is being used in a very negative way, it's a completely out of the vortex attempt to get someone else to really be out of the vortex with you. But someone who's just using it as a descriptive word, who's not out of the vortex, what you've heard us say on so many occasions, it does not matter what you say, it's how you feel when you say it.
Right.
And so when you think about it, there are people, Jerry is one of them, who was always so completely offended by that word that even though there were really funny, Chris Rock is one of them, very, very funny comedians that Esther so wanted to enjoy, Jerry wasn't going to have any of it because that word was so... but over time, he wears you down. And the word comes to not offend you anymore, and then you can enjoy the humor that he's offering all around it. And so it's where you are in relationship to your vortex first, and then the word next. Because the fact of it is, people could use any word out of the vortex or any word in the vortex.
Right.
There's an out of the vortex and in the vortex version of almost everything.
Right. Okay. My last question is about, we've touched on it today already, about the notion of freedom. And as I've been sort of reflecting on that for myself, and also when I hear other people talk about freedom, oftentimes they're talking about freedom from resistance, freedom from negative relationships, freedom from debt, freedom from bad government, freedom from hot weather. But really, it strikes me that if we're going to use that to its fullest advantage, we really want to focus on the freedom to. And I'm wondering if we're ready for a rampage of freedom to from Abraham.
Freedom, really good conversation again. And most people, but there's another word again, using freedom out of the vortex or in the vortex, isn't it? Freedom from always sort of knots you up, and the more specific you get in wanting to talk about what you're getting freedom from, the more bound you are. Isn't that interesting? Let's take it just for fun. Let's take it to freedom from an oppressive employer who yells at everybody in order to try to get what's wanted. And doesn't that sort of paint an image? Can you imagine somebody yelling at you, screaming at you to try to motivate you to do something differently? So a really specific thought that feels really awful while you're using the word freedom. So then let's get more general about it. Freedom in a general sense in a general negative sense, is freedom from things I don't want, freedom from things that bother me, freedom from negative thoughts. It's more general and not as binding. Now let's use freedom in a generally positive. Freedom to feel good, freedom to wake up feeling good, freedom to breathe deeply, freedom to feel good, freedom to have clear thoughts, freedom to sort of float free, freedom to think what I want to think, freedom in my own mind, freedom to be as I want, freedom to feel good, freedom to align with the energies that create world, freedom to know my real power, freedom to align with the fullness of who I am, freedom to witness and experience in great depths all of the things that I've incrementally put into the vortex, freedom to feel my way there, freedom to interpret what's there, freedom to begin to discover the fullness of what's in the vortex, freedom to align with the fullness of who I am, freedom to allow everyone to be as they choose to be, freedom to feel the rightness with whatever they are choosing, with no contradiction to my own alignment, freedom to unequivocally feel good, the freedom to choose the thought by thought that aligns me with the way Source feels about the subject, the freedom to find out what Source feels by feeling for it, knowing that Source will hold it until I find it, the freedom knowing that there's no rush to get there because Source will never deviate, there's no chance that I won't get there. So I am free to take my time to go as slow or as fast as I want, to explore as broadly or as narrowly as I want, to be all that I choose to be in any moment or not, to nap or to sleep, to cover up if I'm cold and to uncover if I'm too warm, to migrate, to choose, to keep myself happy, the freedom to utilize the energy that creates worlds for the purpose of my own pleasure and satisfaction, understanding that I can offer no harm or deprive no one of freedom in my quest for it, that in freedom which is wholly offered to everyone, which is a vibrational state of being, that there is no possible way that in exercising my freedom I could deprive anyone else of theirs. It is the ultimate allowing of well-being and alignment with Source and fulfilling of my reason for being.
It's always a pleasure. Thank you very much.
For us as well.